what is my value system? And yeah, I mean, doing a daily check-in, not thinking like too far future and your whole life, but just like what's important to me today. Like, I love that.
All right, I'm here with the one and only Karsta Lowe. Karsta, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
My name is Aaron Wexler, and you're on Within the Game podcast. And I'm here with Karsta Lowe, who's an Olympic bronze medalist, an NCAA champion at UCLA from 2011, where I was a volunteer assistant coach. You were also a volunteer assistant coach in 2020 at USC, and you played professionally overseas in Puerto Rico, Italy, and China. You're also a geography and environmental studies major, as am I. So I thought that was pretty cool.
I didn't know that. Love that.
Yeah. So once again, Karsta, thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, I'm so excited to be here. Yeah, I mean, it was we caught up, what was it, like a month ago at the 10-year reunion, and that was such a great blast from the past to like see all those people, and nothing had changed. Like everyone was exactly the same. But yeah, I'm excited to chat and get into it.
Yeah, no, I mean, 10 years have flown by, and that was like an amazing run. And then watching the NCAA tournament now, and I just remember everything that happened, and that was just like a crazy, amazing run that we had. And it was awesome. We'll get into that a little bit more, but I always like to start with this question. You know, this podcast is all about tools to stay inspired, right? Tools for inspired living. So I always like to ask my guests, like, what does inspired living mean to you?
That's such a loaded question. It's this daily struggle to stay inspired. I think and for me, I've always had to keep it really fresh, like something that things get stale for me really quickly. And so for me, staying inspired is like constantly reaching for more. I think like I've always had to push myself to be really uncomfortable to stay inspired and, look at different outlets, look to different people, get outside my bubbles and social circles. And I mean, I'm still working on it. You know, that's a daily thing for me to stay inspired. But I think just getting ready to create stuff, that's what I like to think about, being inspired.
And as an athlete, I love that you said that. As an athlete, what do you mean by that? Like, what do you mean by create?
Sure. So, you create on the court. And, I think as I've stepped away from playing a little bit as of late, it's really interesting to get the perspective and see that you really are creating something on the court for people to enjoy and to watch. And, as I said, not being an athlete for a couple of months and looking at athletes and what they're doing, and they really are inspiring the general public. They really are creating something on the court, a spectacle, of physical, but also like mental talent. I mean, I just think the fortitude it takes to be an athlete is insane, and something now I appreciate a lot more, again, like as I've stepped away. But also creating off the court is, its own challenge, and finding your own interests and passions that are not sport.
Yeah, no, I love that you said that, because I think creativity is such a big part of staying inspired, living an inspired life, just being around inspired people. Like, people in my circle, including you, like are just like always looking to create the next thing, whether it's on the court, in the game, outside of the game, so I just love that you said that. It's great. Found this quote that you had, and it was, I'll just read it. You said, you just have to be yourself, and some people are going to love you and some are not. And I was hoping you could just expand on that a little bit.
Sure. Yeah. So I think one of the things that I like about myself, or that I've noticed about myself recently, is I think that I am a very authentic person. I've been told that from people, and it's something that I only really appreciated about myself recently, and something I didn't really know. But that I try to be myself all the time, no matter what. And it's just kind of how I am. And I don't really have a filter. What's on my brain just comes out. But, along with that is there's definitely going to be people where you're not their cup of tea. And, like I have a really strong personality and it's too much, or like whatever. I mean, not that I've like had any like real issues with people, but, it's just that's a fear that you're not going to be accepted and liked for who you are. But I think all those like quotes that are kind of cliche are actually so true, that there's really, everyone else is taken. Like you can only really be yourself. And
Yeah.
I have never found like so much joy in the moments. I have never found more joy than in the moments where I just felt like I was really being true to myself, and where I was doing something, or I was making something, or creating, or with people. And I thought like, this is me. Like I am who I want to be right now. And whether that's accepted or loved by others, I'm okay with it. And as long as I'm not hurting anyone else and I'm being good to other people, all I can do is like be the best version of me. And it's going to work for some people and it's not going to work for some people. But, you know, you can only control one person's opinions, and that's yourself. So
I really resonate with that. You know, it's been a recurring theme on this show, which is FOPO, fear of other people's opinions. And Dr. Mike Gervais taught me about that. And it's very prevalent, I feel like, in sports and in our society right now. And especially with the youth and, you know, the IG, and everyone's just looking around and just trying to look good and you know, create maybe a good opinion in someone else about themselves, you know. And I really think this idea of authenticity and vulnerability is just so key right now. What do you suggest to any athlete or coach that's listening to this, you know, that feels that in their culture, you know, and that like, how do we shift that as leaders, you know,
that feels that they're always aware of what other people think of them,
that feels that, yeah, or their players, or like even them as coaches, or like we feel that there's this underlying FOPO, this fear of other people's opinions, that we always have to look good and we always have to have good results, and we always have to, like, even the idea of being inspired, like you don't have to be inspired all the time. Like that's not the goal. Like, I mean, maybe it is the goal, but you know, it's not realistic. You know, we're human beings, you know, but just knowing that we're always on the spotlight and we always have to like look a certain way. I think that's a really big topic and it's really relatable. Could you just talk a little bit about that? Like, cause you've been in the spotlight, you know, you've been on the biggest stage in the world in the Olympics, you know, how do you deal with that?
Yeah. So, I mean, full transparency, I still deal with it. You know, I talk a lot, but of course I still worry about other people's opinions. And I've struggled with that. I mean, I've been very honest that I care what people think, but what I think what I'm learning to do better is being really selective of whose opinions I care about. And I'm really lucky that I have an amazing support system around me in my friends and my family. And I really respect the hell out of those people. And so those are the people's opinions I care about. And I mean, I've even disagreed with them, but I think, you know, it's really easy to do, but I think in the end, it's only a impediment to success and what you really want, because you're just going to waste time on it, because there's 7 billion people or however many, you know, it's like, you are never going to control anyone else's opinion of you. And if you do, you're really just kind of like spinning your tires in the mud. You're not going to get what you want. And I think that's something that I've noticed a lot. You know, as an athlete, you're kind of like given this trajectory. Like I didn't care what people ever thought about me on the court, and that's why I succeeded. But the court was always like the court, a very controlled situation. And as I've stepped away from the court and seen, I think people who who achieve what they really want and the most success, that objectively what we consider a success, is they really just go for what they want and they don't waste time on caring what people think, because it's just pointless. It's a waste of time. And I think that, you know, you should really just hone in on what matters to you, what your value system is. And then, okay, I have this value system set in place. This is what's important to me. And again, I'm the only person's opinion I can control. So I'm going to like put my stock in myself.
I love that. I love how you said the value system. One of my mentors, David Meltzer, told me to take daily inventory of your values.
Wow.
Does that resonate with you as an athlete?
Yeah. I mean, as an athlete, as a person, for sure. And that's something I'm still distilling, like what is my value system? And yeah, I mean, doing a daily check and not thinking like too far future and your whole life, but just like what's important to me today. Like I
Right.
love that. And what do I really want to value today? And what, character traits or whatever is important in my conversations without overthinking too much. But yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's a big missing piece for athletes, for coaches, for even for entrepreneurs, like, because we're always so goal oriented. We always want to win. We want the next thing. We want this. We want that. And those are good things, but I think it's really important in that process to just stop and be like, okay, what am I? What is my value system? What are my
Yeah.
values? What are the things that I need to really stay focused on while I'm going for my goals, while I'm on the pursuit,
Yeah,
of excellence or of winning,
for sure.
and I just wish that I learned that, now that I'm having conversations about that now. That's part of the goal of this podcast is whoever's listening, like learn that now,
Yeah.
like really get into the value system of yourself
Yeah.
so that you can be the best version of yourselves. Cause I think that's the main win. I mean, we've experienced winning together, like that championship and that was great, but after winning, it's like, okay, then what, right? You go to the next thing, right? And for you, you
Yeah.
went to the Olympics and Team USA and then played pro. And it's always for an athlete, it's always like cool. Even if you win, it's like you want to win again. You want to go,
Yeah,
you want to keep going. And I think we can get lost in that pursuit sometimes, of our own values.
for sure. For
Yeah.
sure.
Let's revisit that 2011 championship. That was again 10 years ago. Crazy.
Yeah.
What does anything stand out from you in your mind from that run?
How little I played. No,
You were a
yeah,
freshman, right?
I was a freshman.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, I think obviously I think a lot about people and I like again that was so long ago, but I'm still best friends with Zoe Nightingale,
Cool.
like and that's really special to me that, we had that shared experience and it was such a different like in retrospect, it was so different than what we were used to. I mean, like I was riding the bench and Zoe was all tournament team, and I love that. Like I love that. I mean, like that sounds cocky, but it's more just like, we had this experience where I had a very different role. And like I forget that I won a national championship because I don't feel like I was an integral piece of the team, but of course everyone's an integral piece of the team. But I think a lot about like mostly the people and the relationships. And yeah, I mean, what a special time. And it was really the kickoff of like my serious volleyball career, like that was my
Hmm.
freshman year. I had just graduated high school and I was this really lanky freshman who was just bumbling around. And then I got to win a national championship, and then obviously as a player, I didn't really like bloom until later, but still such a great kickoff, like I said.
I remember like you just hitting the crap out of the ball like
Did I?
consistently. Yeah, you
Did
just
I?
like, and it was like so effortless. Like you just, I mean, as a lefty opposite, just being able to just, take this great approach and go hammer the ball, whether you're tooling the block or going deep angle. I love your deep angle shot. I think you love that shot, like that deep area one
Yeah,
shot.
Rex, you remember?
I remember.
No,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
speaking of tooling, that's what I remember from the championship game. I got tooled. I went in as a blocking sub for people who don't know volleyball. I came in as for one job to block the ball and I literally failed and then got subbed out. But then we won that game and I totally like changed the whole rhythm of the game. But
That was against Illinois, I want to
yeah,
say. Was it
Illinois.
Illinois? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. And something that I learned about you that I didn't know is that you actually were a walk-on. And I didn't know
Yeah.
that. You were a walk-on. And then, during that year, you got offered a full scholarship for the rest of your career at UCLA.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. I was a really late bloomer. Like I said, I was really lanky and I wasn't getting any big scholarship offers from any big D1 programs. And my brother went to UCLA at the time, and I really wanted to be at a big powerhouse. And I I decided that I'd rather start small and work my way up than go somewhere and, stay like plateau as a player. And so I'm so grateful. And my family was a huge piece of making that decision. But yeah, I'm so grateful, obviously, that I took a chance and went in as a walk-on. And then, Mike Seeley took a chance on me and gave me a scholarship. So yeah, it all worked out, but didn't know if it would.
Yeah, no, that's really inspiring. Shout out Coach Seeley. Shout out Zoe Nightingale too. Make sure the shout outs get out there. I think that's really inspiring for any athlete who might be listening to this, or coach, or even a parent of an athlete, to have a walk-on opportunity and then to kind of blossom into a full ride athlete. Can you just talk about the mindset, about that? Like, how did that happen here first in your mind? Like, you get to UCLA. I remember I played at UCLA too. I remember I got there, I was like a little intimidated, like, oh man, I made it. Here I am, but then the whole new level starts, right? But like, when you get there, when you got there, as the walk-on, what was your mindset to like, did you have a scholarship in mind? Was that a goal? Did you just?
Yeah. I knew I wanted to get a scholarship, and I knew I wanted to be playing and that I eventually could play. But yeah, I mean, it's totally the big fish in a small pond from high school. Then you go on and you're a tiny fish in a huge pond, and you're surrounded by like world-class athletes. But that is exactly why I chose to go to UCLA, because I knew where I wanted to be. And so I just surrounded myself with that. And I was like, okay, well, I'm going to go there and then do really well and find a way to earn a scholarship. And I just throughout my volleyball career, talk about manifestation, like that term has become so popular now, but I think that's why I've had success, I think, in my volleyball career, is that once I decide I'm doing something, I'm going to do it. Like I cannot be stopped. And off the cuff, it sounds cocky, but it's true. I think that's truly how I got what I wanted as a volleyball player. I wish I was as good at that in my off the court life, but yeah.
Man, I'm so appreciative that you mentioned manifestation, talking my language now. Can you talk a little bit more about that? What is that? Because, back at UCLA, it's like that was the time when I was actually reading a lot about creative visualization. And do you remember some of those visualizations that I did for the team?
Yeah.
That was that for me, remembering back then, again, 10 years ago, that was me thinking of like, okay, how could I best add value to the team with the knowledge that I have that I'm learning right now about this creative visualization and the manifestation powers that we all have when we tap into the quantum. That's getting a little deep, but that's kind of what we did. And I would love for you to talk about that as like your experience with that, being an athlete as well as now off the court. Like, yeah, talk about that a little bit.
Sure. Yeah. So I think it's things that all got labels like later, and you maybe were already tapped in it. Like you and Seeley were always like so into like, I don't know what some people consider like woo woo, but like, trust me, I believe in that shit. Like I love it. And I think that's something that all became like labeled later for me, but like manifestation, I think, is something that, has obviously been around forever. And I think it's something that my family has always really been, like put a premium on. Is like, if you want something, there are steps to do it and you can do it. And that's manifestation, right? Like it doesn't need a cool word just to say that once you set your sights on something, there are steps to take to do it. And of course, some things you need, like, I'm 6'4" and I've got raw talent. Like, there's things that were helping me out as well, but there's a lot to be said for hard work and laying out a plan to get what you want. And looking back, you were talking about the visualizations that you and Seeley, Seeley always put a huge premium on the mental side of the game. And I think that's something I'm only having true appreciation for it now. And like there's so much to be said for physical ability, and you can't do it without physical ability, but the mental side is such a key component. I mean, without it, you're really lost and your physical skills go out the window, right? If you're like shitting the bed in a match, it doesn't matter that you're the best player in the world, whatever, like your brain needs to be on lock. And so, albeit I'm not the best visualizer or meditator or, those, but there's so much to be said for that side of the game. And that's something I'm really appreciative that, Sealy and the staff at UCLA really put a premium on. And it's obvious. I mean, athletes around the world are talking about the mental side of the game and mental health. And I think that was something that was always really emphasized.
Yeah. Yeah. And, the value in that for me is that it just transcends sport. It just, like it's one thing, like I said, to win, but it's another thing to take these tools, because that's what this podcast is about. It's about tools, the tools within, the tools of visualization, the tools of manifestation. Those are tools that we can use as human beings, but spiritual beings too. I'm a spiritual person, and I believe that, if we can utilize these tools outside of the game, and help, positively affect our environment, or the people around us, or the world itself, I think that's when we're creating an impact, a true positive impact, Could you talk a little bit about playing for Karsta and Team USA and the experience of winning a bronze medal?
Yeah, that's literally the perfect segue, because I was thinking about Karsta when you talked about transcending sport. And he used to always say that sport is like life's best teacher, because it condenses life lessons into these like really quick episodes where you have to learn something really quickly. And that's like sport is a vehicle for learning things really quickly. And I always really appreciate that he said that. And it's so true. But yeah, talking about Karch and my time with the national team, I mean, I don't know where to start. Karch is an amazing coach. Obviously, he's played the game, better than anyone, maybe you could argue. And he's obviously the GOAT in volleyball, both indoor and beach. So he's just a wealth of information. And I think he's the type where, truthfully, he doesn't give a lot of technical feedback, but when he does, it's okay. That's it, like that's the word. That's the answer. So that was obviously really cool to learn from him and to see the game from his perspective. I think he sees the game in a really unique and interesting light. And obviously, so much to be said for that. And, proofs in the pudding. He did it. And yeah, we won a bronze medal in 2016 in Rio. And that was obviously the peak of my athletic career and something I'm really proud of. And, contrasting from the national championship with UCLA, I believe I did have an integral piece on, I was an integral piece of that bronze medal. And I'm really proud of that. And coming off the bench, I was, able to make an impact. And that's something that I'm really proud of. And that obviously no one can take away from me. And my medal's over there in the corner. And I don't look at it that much, but it's just, it's something that has honestly, shaped a lot of who I am. And it's something I, get to feel good about all the time, which is great. But, yeah, also it only lasts for so long, and then things go on and, they win a gold medal. So, but yeah, it was my time with the national team, I think about very fondly.
Awesome. I had Karch on this show too. And
oh, really?
one of the main things that I learned from him is going back to mindset stuff, is like how to manage your mind, and how to be. So do you know who Sue Enquist? You remember Sue, don't you? Sue Enquist.
Are you kidding?
Right?
Sue?
Of course, yeah.
No, Sue works at the national team. I was just
right.
I was just on a trip with her, actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So Sue Enquist and Karch are like, they're such a good team, right?
Yeah.
And if anyone doesn't know Sue Enquist, she's been on the show too. 11-time champion softball coach, UCLA. But she's just like the secret sauce. Like she just has she has this ability to basically teach how to manage your mind. Right. And I remember that peace sign. I'll never forget it. The whole 1% better thing, you know, it really helped me. I ran with that because I really resonate with that message. But tying what she was talking about back into what Karch was talking about, which is this idea of productive thoughts. And now we're going back into mindset a little bit. But again, could you talk a little bit about when you have like an unproductive thought or a weak voice, which Sue would call it, to a productive thought or strong voice, to what Karch is talking about? Could you talk about that a little bit, and like how to identify that, and when you're in weak voice, how to transfer straight into strong voice?
Yeah, I have not heard that language about it, but I think, you know, it's all about self-talk, right?
Yeah,
and like the different types of self-talk. And I think a huge hurdle first is identifying what is a productive thought or not. And, you know, just having awareness around your thoughts is really, really hard. And like, I have a lot of intrusive thoughts. So like I've struggled with a lot of mental illness and thoughts that are not productive, are not helpful. And for so long, I think I had no awareness over those thoughts. And I think just being able to identify and just be conscious that you're having those thoughts is huge. Like that's the first thing. And then, okay, so this is productive, this is not. Knowing what's going to fuel you forward or what's going to bring you back to, you know, adjust the script is again really difficult and something that I am still working on. And I think the most you can do is like I said, accept and have awareness when the thoughts are not productive or helpful. And, you know, it's really as simple as changing that thought by saying it to yourself and repeating it and verbalizing it or saying it out loud. For me, I have to say something for it to really feel like, so I talk out loud to myself all the time. You know, I have like therapy sessions in my car, you know, like just changing that language out loud for me has helped change the script in my brain and change those thoughts. But damn, it's hard. I mean, it's not easy.
Yeah. You mentioned mental health issues. I mean, I know that's a really tough topic for some people. Would you be willing to talk a little bit about that? And just, you know, if anyone's going through a tough time with anything, what are some tools that they can use other than, you know, what you just talked about, that self-talk and changing the script, which I love. You know, take that if you want.
Yeah. I'm an open book with mental health. I don't talk a lot about it like on my own platform, but if anyone asks, I am like, let's talk, because I think mental health is finally kind of getting its time in the spotlight, and thank God it's time. And it's something that everyone struggles with, right? Like there are people who, like my mom, she gets stressed about things, but like it's never like all consuming, you know, or like just these big periods of like depression or anxiety. I mean, there are people who are blessed in their brain, but they have their problems. I'm not saying, but where their brain kind of operates like it's supposed to. But I think the majority of us struggle a lot in our own brain. And I know I for sure have. I have a OCD diagnosis. So I do a lot of like obsessive thinking that gets really, really dark and like all consuming. So, you know, it can be a multitude of things. An easy example, when I was growing up, I was really insecure about my height. And there was an entire summer, I'm 6'4". So there was an entire summer in high school where I only thought about my height, like only. And so I was depressed, I was a super depressed little high schooler kid thinking about my height 24/7, how I was taller than everyone, how I was never going to meet a man or like whatever, and that was something I didn't even know I was struggling with until later in life. I didn't get an OCD diagnosis until I was 25, and on average, it takes 11 years to diagnose, I think. So there's so much silent struggle happening for people. And I am one of them, I silently struggled a lot, and not because I didn't have amazing people around me, but because they didn't have the knowledge or resources to identify it. So I think, as we get more knowledge and resources out there, hoping that, it can be identified. And like I was saying about the productive thoughts, that question about awareness, I think just initial awareness is the most challenging part. And I still get in thought loops where I don't have awareness of how dark it is until it's retrospectively and the week has passed and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I was in such a dark place because I was obsessing about this thing. But in the moment, it's very hard to see your own brain objectively. So anyways, that's a lot. But I think mental health and mental illness I consider it to be everything. I think it's the umbrella over everything else, because without it, it's very difficult to get the joy that you could. Like when I'm in those dark places, I'm not able to connect or be present with people. And it's something I struggle with all the time. And truthfully, I think I'll struggle with my whole life. I think realistically, it's an ongoing challenge, but I've accepted that. And now, it's like, okay, let's talk about Sue Enquist. She always says, she's like, the secret's out, like once you accept something, it's like, well, now what? Now I'm going to fucking do. Sorry.
It's okay.
You can bleep me out, but now I'm going to do something about it, So anyways, yeah.
No, that's great. And then if anyone listening to this is having mental health issues and struggling, like what's the point at which they need to reach out to somebody?
Yeah, I think it's really different for everyone. I mean, I think everyone needs some one person that they are very vulnerable with. And I know that's really hard to find sometimes, because sometimes it's not your family, or sometimes it's not your significant other, or whatever it is. Again, I've been really lucky, but I think you should always be talking to someone about what's going on up here, because it gets too scary if you're just up here alone. So I think always you should be. But I think what they say in the medical world is if it's interfering with your daily life and you're struggling to complete daily tasks, or not sleeping well, or not eating well, or not able to perform at work like you used to, I think that's a big sign. I need to figure this out and get some professional opinions. And
100%. And I don't know if I told you this, Karsta, but I'm working on my version of the pyramid of inspired living. And cool. I was inspired to do that from obviously the Pyramid of Success from John Wooden, that we saw every day walking into the gym, but for me, on the very first block on the pyramid is health. And that includes mental health. And, that's just talking about, taking daily inventories of your values. Like that's the number one thing, before anything else, self-care, health, and just can't stress that enough,
For sure.
Yeah. Just a couple more here, Karsta. Let's transition back to inspiration. Any sources of inspiration that come to mind for you?
Source of inspiration. Truthfully, my surroundings have always been a really huge source of inspiration. And I flirted with the idea of being an architect. I went to architecture school, but for me, you know, I've been able to travel a lot and see a lot of different countries and a lot of different places. And that has always been a really big source of inspiration for me, is where I am and who I'm surrounded by kind of dictates what I'm going to produce and the rest. But yeah, I love architecture. I love design. I love people. I don't know. I'm inspired by a lot. I'm one of those people where like, I just love the world.
Yeah.
I love the world. I love looking at it. I love soaking it in. I love experiences. So I can't really put a clear label on what my source of inspiration are.
That's great. That's great. Like the most inspiring people I talk to and ask that to, they say everything, you know, I find it everywhere.
Like, I don't know, that book right there. I don't know.
That's great. I think that's one of the goals of this project and of my message, is that you can find it anywhere. Right. Yeah. And really within, right? You can find it within, like all this stuff that we're talking about, this mental management, this mind management stuff, with like the inspiration's in us, right? Like in spirit, like in us, like
for sure,
you know. So that's awesome. Last question, Karsta, and I really appreciate your time, and this is a lot of fun too. Fulfillment. Talk to me about fulfillment. What does that mean to you?
Fulfillment, I think being fulfilled is having a like you said, kind of like a transcendent version of yourself. I think when you can feel like a really high form of yourself and the best version of yourself that you like and love, I think that's where fulfillment comes. And when you feel like you're really reaching the top of what you can be, that's the times I've felt the most fulfilled. So I'm working on it.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Karsta Lowe, thank you so much for...
I feel like we like tapped into like many deep topics. I feel like you can, I'll come on again and we can like really dive into each one.
Yeah, no, we should, because I actually want to tap more into the manifestation in the quantum field, because that's really what interests me. But no, I really appreciate you coming on, and and just spending some time and some mindset and getting vulnerable. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Anytime. I'm one of the more vulnerable people.
Yeah. No, I think that's great. How can people connect with you or find more about you?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram, Karsta Lowe, and I'm trying to push out more stuff lately. I'm not the best on social or like promoting myself. It makes me cringe, but stay tuned. There might be more coming.
Yeah, and I think you could really help a lot of people with that vulnerability. That's a tough one for a lot of people, including myself, right? Like the podcast world has helped me be more vulnerable, but I think that's something you could really help a lot of people with.
Oh, thank you. That's so nice.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right, Karsta. Well, this was great. Thank you so much again, and we'll do a part 2 soon.
Okay, sounds good. Bye, Wex.
Okay, thanks a lot. Bye. This episode is brought to you by DAF Global. If you're looking to start a podcast, or you have a podcast and you're looking for editing services, hit up my guys Oliver and Garrett at DAF Global. They're awesome. They help me with this podcast, and they take care of all kinds of different services like editing and audio enhancement, and they're great to work with. They're also offering a 10% discount to all Within the Game listeners. So hit my guys up at DAF Global on Instagram, and also on their website, www.dafglobal.co.uk.